Hey family, I'm Kaelion. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, cryptologic linguist, a seeker, and a messenger, and I walk with those who carry both shadow and flame. With some of the resonance of my recent videos, which I appreciate very much, I've received a few questions asking more about who I am. I'm working on a book that tells my life story, but in the meantime, here's a short intro for anyone who's still deciding whether I'm someone worth listening to. And check out the song Warrior by Aurora that inspired this video. I left a link in the description. I was born in 1985 in a city called Paterson, New Jersey. It was a city carved from fire and struggle, filled with rhythm and heart. Paterson was mostly Black and Hispanic when I grew up there, and I was a child of two opposites. My mother, a brilliant black woman whose health was frail, but whose mind was bright. And my father, a white man who had been given heroin at the age of 10 by someone who should have protected him. It was a cruel act that shaped the rest of his life. He carried that burden into adulthood, contracting HIV long before people understood it. By the time I was conceived, the doctors warned there was little chance I would be born without it. But I was. Something protected me. They said it was chance, and back then it really was. The embryonic sac just happened to keep me safe. When my mother passed away, I was only 3 years old, and when my father followed, I was 6. Before he left this world, he made my grandfather promise him one thing, though: to make sure I earned my black belt in martial arts. My father thought it would teach me to survive, and he was right. And so my grandfather kept that promise. Martial arts became my first language of discipline, and a way to channel my rage into focus and my grief into power. Growing up, both sides of my family had forms of faith. Christian roots, church on Sundays for my mother's side, and my family on my father's side claiming to be Christian, but certainly never really acting like it. I attended church sometimes, but I couldn't find God in those walls. I couldn't understand a world where children buried their parents before they even learned what love was supposed to be. I couldn't understand a cruel world that I had experienced and the idea of a loving God that everybody seemed to preach. And so I turned away from God. I questioned everything: teachers, preachers, systems, and when I didn't like the answers, I burned bridges. By the 9th grade, I dropped out. I was in gifted programs when I was younger, but potential meant nothing when your soul felt numb. But then, early in my life, came love, the kind that sneaks up on broken people. By 16, I was a father, and for the first time, I had something worth staying alive for. Not long after that, though, came 9/11, and for a kid from Paterson, it wasn't some distant news. The men who carried it out once lived on the same street I grew up on. I remember thinking, if I stay here, I'll die with nothing but regret. So when a recruiter promised a way out, a uniform, a future, and something for my family, I said yes. But the Army didn't just hand me a gun. They handed me a headset. I became a cryptologic linguist, trained to intercept coded enemy transmissions. My job was to listen to the unseen and to translate signals that most people never even knew existed. And though I didn't realize it then, that skill, the ability to hear patterns in the noise, was preparing me for something much larger. In the military, I loved the discipline, the purpose, and the honor of wearing the uniform. I was proud to serve my country, and I even found talent and joy in ceremonies, standing tall in parades, narrating change of command rituals, and seeing the pride in the faces of the family watching their sons and daughters serve. But behind the sharp salute was a man falling apart. I was an angry husband and an unstable father. I didn't yet know how to love without control or fear, and when the Army ordered me to seek mental health treatment, I went, reluctantly. And that was when the floodgates opened. In therapy, the ghost I'd buried came back, and with the medication I was prescribed, something else came. Visions, voices, and messages. They terrified me. I thought I was losing my mind. But now I believe I was perhaps being broken open for the first time. The mind that once decoded signals for the military was being retrained to decode the signals of the soul. By 2011, I was medically retired. On paper, I had respect, but in reality, I had no purpose, no God, and no direction. Just an empty man with medals and memories. I wandered for years, working jobs that didn't fit, and after my marriage ended, chasing love to fill the hole. I hurt many people who didn't deserve it, and every time I thought I'd found something worth holding on to, it slipped through my hands. Then one day, I met a girl who loved flowers. She was gentle, she was radiant, and when I looked at her, I saw everything I had lost. But, just like everything else in my life, I lost her too. That heartbreak shattered the last wall around my heart, and I remember falling to my knees and crying out to whatever might be listening at the time, that if there was anything else out there, to please show me. Around this time, I was led back home to New Jersey, where I visited my mother's grave for the first time since her death when I was a child. I prayed to her for answers that night as well. Not long after that, in a dark room, something answered. Not with words, but with feeling. It felt like love, joy, and awe. Everything all at once. I knew in that moment I wasn't alone. And somehow, I knew it was her. My mother. Not just my mother here on earth, but something greater. The Divine Mother. And after that moment, I dropped to one knee and promised to serve that presence for the rest of my life. A lightning strike outside sealed that vow not long after. That was the night the soldier in me met the seeker. The oath I once took for my country found its echo in heaven. And after that, everything began to change rapidly. Dreams, synchronicities, and songs. The divine began to speak to me through all of it. My background in decoding messages suddenly made sense. I realized I was never just trained to serve the government. I was trained to serve the truth. To listen for the patterns that connect us all. And from there, I continued to hear from God. But not the God of division I heard so many preach, but a divine balance, a mother and a father, light and shadow, sun and moon. And I began to understand something else, that love, the kind that serves and the kind that saves, is both earthly and divine. And I began to hope and hear from someone out there who was a reflection of that love in me, someone I call Trinity. That light has guided me ever since. And I believe when my work is done, and when I've walked this path of service fully, I'll find her, as I've mentioned in other videos. In the meantime, I share these messages here with you in the hopes that they may help someone out there find faith again. I won't lie, it's a difficult road, but hearing from many of you at least helps make some of it seem worth it. And now a prayer for my beloved spiritual and code sister Malika. May every seeker remember that their pain was never punishment. It may have been preparation. May every soldier of the Spirit learn to lay down their weapon and lift their light. And may the Mother and Father reunite through us in balance, in love, and in purpose. Ashe, Amin, and Amen. If this message speaks to you, help me spread it by liking, commenting, sharing, or simply whispering it into the wind. Thanks for watching, family. See you next time. Same fire, new rhythm.